So welcome again, everybody. We're here today with the limited edition and HYT. So I'm just going to hand it over basically and let everybody introduce themselves. We all, at this point, I think we all know who I am and who Adam Craniotes is and who David Sharp is, but we'll let Pietro and Gregory go ahead and introduce themselves. We have some really to see. So I'll hand it over to you guys.
Yeah.
Perfect. I'll take over, Gregory, if that's okay. I'm Pietro from the UK. I run a platform specialized in independent watchmaking in the UK, which was a fairly pioneering thing to do back in 2015. And we've been blessed with the following and the love of some of the most amazing brands out there. One of them is definitely HYT. And we're lucky enough today to have the CEO of HYT and the scientific mind behind the technology of the brand, Lucien Vouillamoz, also member of the board. And it's a pleasure for me to introduce the US and the UK crowd to these two pioneers of Swiss watchmaking. Over to you, Greg.
Yeah, thank you all. It's really great to have all together here, David, Adam, Kathleen, Pietro, and all the people that follow this webinar. So let me introduce you. You know, this guy. This guy is the most important guy because he got the initial idea, you know, in 2002 during the Swiss exhibition, National Swiss exhibition. And you know that HYT is located in Neuchâtel. Neuchâtel is the birthplace of watchmaking, and in Neuchâtel you have a lake, and in 2002 there was this national exhibition, and there was a lake, there was the link with the birthplace of the watch industry, one of the most important places. And basically, Lucien had the idea of why, basically, how is it that in all the watches we use hands that rotate in a very abstract way to tell the time. And when you do the history of the watch industry and the history of the science, you realize that 4,000 years ago, especially in Egyptia, the very first, and before the sun clocks, the human people, they used water in order to measure the times. It was called the clepsydras. And based on that, there is something which is very intuitive in a way to represent and to visualize the time that which is flowing, you know, time flies, time is flowing, etc. And the Greek philosopher, you know, centuries ago, said that Heraclitus, he said that time is like a river. You know, you cannot stop it, you cannot reverse it. So time is a constant flow. It cannot stop it. And there is something very strong in the visualization of this flow. And the idea, the very first idea of HYT is to say, hey, step back, stop the science. Because in the Enlightenment periods, you know, in the 15th, 16th century, there has been huge innovation, amazing innovation, which were the wheels and the gears. And thanks to these wheels and gears, you know, there has been the rotation movements and this precision that were coming, and all that's moving. You just had to plug a hand and it was rotating. What I mean is that it was very convenient, and it's still convenient, and it has been an amazing invention for the physicists. It was not for the intuition, for the human people. And what the initial project of HYT is to give back to the human people, to us, you know, what makes sense what is the best way to visualize the stream of time, the flow of time. And for that, at HYT, we have invented a new way to tell the time. And for that, we use liquids. And I'm very happy to have tonight, because it's a kind of improvisation. It was not planned, but we took a lot of aperitif. You know, that we are in confinement, so we have to step back a little. But we took some drinks, and I'm really always very, very happy to have Lucien Vouillamoz, who is the initial inventor of the technology, who got this idea really to revolutionize and to propose a new way to tell the time. So Lucien, maybe you can add something.
Okay, so pleasure being with you. English is not my native language, so I will try to communicate in that language. My native language is French. I speak normally German and Spanish. So very happy to be with you. If I see now, so I have, if you, can you show the watches here? So you have here different, so HYT watches with one similarity. One thing which is very unique is the thin tube of glass which will be filled during the day, showing the time flow. So between the vision, so Gregory spoke about an idea. You know, imagine you would have had that idea personally. Imagine you would think, you would have thought 10 years ago, it's more than that, 2002 it was, okay, the ancient used to show time with liquid or with sand. Huh? Sand clock, water clocks, so that is the history. How can we do that or put that inside of a wearable small device? It's simply the idea. Imagine you would have to, I would have been your professor and tell you, please, okay, you have now the task. Find a way to show the time flow inside of a small wearable device.
Especially, Lucien, after centuries where everyone was focused in prevent liquids to get in touch with any mechanical device whatsoever.
Yeah, and to be honest, the first idea was not to put that inside on a wristwatch. The first idea was to put that as a collier.
Necklace.
A necklace.
Oh, really?
The first idea was time for you. So the idea was that you will not read the time yourself. You have to ask your wife, or your wife has to ask you, please, can you look at my time? What time is it? Okay. So because the idea, okay, to show to the progression of the time with liquid, you have to use, I'm a scientist basically, my studies are in nuclear physics. So, and I will not, I would say, make you tired about speaking about physics. That's not very interesting, but so there is a law, a natural law. So if you put liquids inside of the thin tube, some special laws make that the liquid behaves in a special way. So the first idea was to simply find a way to show the time with a small tube with a progression of liquid inside of that, like a normal clepsydra. I can maybe, so sorry, I'm a little bit enthusiastic. That is my maybe quality and default. But imagine you are in your house. You don't have nothing to, I would say, to meet the progression in the time during the day. Okay. So, question. with nothing, no mechanics, no electricity, with nothing, how can you have a precise reference to know what time is it?
With a clepsydra.
No, with nothing. You don't have nothing. You have the possibility to see. You have your eyes.
Yeah.
And you have the time, okay? So answers, sunset, sunrise.
Yeah.
That is the only moment when you see precisely, if the weather is good, you see precisely, really precisely, the sun is here, the sun disappears. There is two references. With sun, day, night, and 2 points, sunset, sunrise, that's it. Now, if you would have liquids or a small river in your garden, you would have the possibility, with a little bit intelligence, to create a relatively precise watch. In fact, you need 2 reservoirs. Okay, you have to use the river, the small river, to fill a first reservoir. You have to install that reservoir relatively high, maybe 2 meters. And that reservoir has to be filled, overfilled with the small river. So that the reservoir is always full. And after that, you make a small hole in that reservoir, on the bottom of the reservoir, a small hole. And you will have a leak of water, a small, comment c'est une chute d'eau?
Leak, yeah.
A waterfall, small waterfall. And if the reservoir, the top reservoir, remain full with that leak will have a constant flow, un débit constant. Okay, a constant flow, because the pressure is always the same. After that, you take a second glass, a second container, you transparent, if possible. It could be something like that, but let's say 1 meter high, and you have to calibrate the diameter of that leak so that the second glass is filled in 12 hours, for instance. Okay, so during the morning, you begin when the sun rises, you begin to fill the reservoir. At midday, you will see the reservoir is half full. At 5 p.m. is almost full. And 6 p.m. is absolutely full. You empty the reservoir and you begin again for during the night. You have a precise clock, very precise clock. But your reading of time is not the same. You will not look for minutes or hours. You will intend to get an impression, a perception about where you are during the day. And if you see the glass half full, you say, yes, okay, I burn half my day, okay? I can enjoy the second half. It's not about minutes, it's about perception, okay? And now if you have, that is the basic idea. Now, if you have that basic idea and you say, okay, I will miniaturize that and put that inside of a wearable, precise system, okay, then you have to invest about 60 million Swiss francs in order to get that running, okay? With a lot of crazy guy like that guy, okay? Other engineers, doctors, a lot of headaches. Americans also, in fact, it was so innovative that nobody in Switzerland was able to do 2 things, to develop 2 things. The small bellows, okay, that is the NASA. We are working with a provider of the NASA, and the inside treatment of the glass inside of the capillary, we call that a coating. It's a very special thing. I will not enter in details. And we began to to make that in San Diego, in California. Without that, these small devices will never have run. So I would say that the HYT watches are the most American Swiss watches. In fact, that's the reality. That's the truth. So I stop with my enthusiasm. Let's the CEO speak. Huh? Okay.
So we're gonna see, Gregory, how to bring time telling back to the roots of using liquids. NASA, 60 millions in Swiss francs, plus
million,
astrophysics
60
engineers were
million
needed.
Swiss francs.
Sorry?
60
yeah.
million Swiss francs.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, look forward to see that.
Yeah. So thank you, Lucien. And what we see that, as Lucien explained, there is a very profound link with the history 4,000 years ago. You know, the Egyptian, the clepsydras, and the thing is that when you go back to the 3rd millennium, what we see, do you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So what we see in the 3rd millennium, we jump and we come back right now, the representation are changing. What we see that everybody now have time with, thanks to that, you know, mobile phone, computer, everywhere, you know, you have always a representation with the digital, you know, 1, 6 to 8 that you see here. And basically this this increase of the representation of the time is so powerful that now when, Pietro, you are located in London, for example. So there has been a very amazing and very great article in the Daily Telegraph in the UK, and saying that it was like 6 months ago, something like that. And 60% of the teenagers, 60% of the teenagers cannot read the time on analog clocks. And it was due to that, it's a really mess at schools, because the students, when they have to do an exam and they have 1 hour, you know, they have to ask to the teacher, okay, what I mean is, I don't understand what's going on with the hands. And for the teachers, instead of reteaching how to read the time on analog clocks, they decided just to unplug. It's because basically this representation using hands, you learn it when you are young. If you do not use it, you forget it. You know, Socrates said, you know, a long time ago, it's by practicing that you have an habit and you learn it. If you
it takes time to learn as well.
If you don't, the new generation, if they don't practice this representation of time, they forget. So that's why the power of this representation with the numbers is very modern, is very contemporary. This is the future, because the young generation, everybody's seeing 1, 6 to 8. And for them, 1, 6 to 8, boom, okay, it's 4 p.m., okay, and 28 minutes. And then you have this, which is I just took a print screen of a computer download, you know. It's like the progress bar, and you see that everywhere and more and more. And I just have this representation here, you know, on luxury cars that don't have any, you know, analog representation and physical stuff. It's all digital. And here you see the representation of the temperature of the motor, temperature of the oil, and here the run per minute, the tank oil, etc. It's only representing by a line, you know, by a gauge. Here you see, you know, the gauge. Here, when you take the plane, you go from here to here. It requires no training of young generation or whatever. You can ask anybody here. You know, you start, you know, your song, your preferred song from here to here. You know that you did approximately 2/3 of the song. Try to see that in your environment. You will see that everywhere. At HYT, we have invented a new way to tell the time. We have a colored liquid which is flowing here. This is a green liquid which is flowing inside a tube of glass, a capillary. And here we have a clear liquid, a transparent liquid. The two liquids have specific properties. They are non-miscible. They cannot mix, okay? And at the here, it represents what you have done in your day. This is your past. This is what you have done. And here it indicates you your future. You start here at 6 in the morning. This is all the things that you have done during your day. And here these are the things that still have to be done until the end of the day. You know, you did approximately 2/3 of your day. And whatever the culture, you can go to America, you can go to Europe, you can go to Asia, whatever. Ask the people, what is time for you? What is time? And people, and all the grammary generally is organized by that. The people see time as a future. The future is becoming the present, the now. And the now is becoming the past. Future, present, past. Future, present, past. It's a flow. It's a constant flow, unstoppable. It's like a river. And that the connection between your past and your future, this is what we call the meniscus. This is the junction between the past and the future. This is the present, and it tells you exactly the hours and what time it is. So this is really the HYT. This is the time is fluid philosophy. And during all the day, you will see the stream of time. Here it's in accelerated. You see the black liquid, which is flowing inside the tube of glass during all the day. And here you really you have a new sense, a new appropriation of a sense of time that is flowing and that is passing by. So this is exactly the philosophy of HYT. How to read the time on a HYT? So you see here that on this watch, which is the H5, you have the black liquid. Here we are, for example, in the morning. So you see the indication of the hours. It's between the black liquid is between the 6 and the 7. And here we have the indication using a hand of the minutes. So here it's 6 because it's between the 6 and the 7 and 30 minutes. The day goes on, and here you see the column of the black liquid which goes forward, and here you see that it's noon and 0 minutes. And here during at the end of the day, it's between the 5 and the 6, and you see that the indication of the minutes it's at 51. So it's 5:51. So you, instead of having a hand which is disappearing during all the day, here you see, the stream of the time and the flow of the time which is appearing here. For sure, at the end of the day, you will have here the colored liquid that will reach the end of the capillary. So it cannot go further here. So what will happen? This is what we call a rewind that you will see here, exactly. We have a special mechanism inside, which is due to a cam. The cam is jumping, and in 1 minute, you will have the colored liquid here that will flow backward, and in 1 minute, it will go back to its position here. That means that we display 12 hours in our watches, like all watches, I would say. But
Greg,
yes.
Can I just stop you just to pinpoint a big question that always comes up when talking about HYT? What we're actually seeing is actually two liquids. It's not one liquid, it's two liquids that are actually pushing against each other. And I don't want to anticipate what's the magic that makes the two liquids completely independent one to the other. But yeah, it is two liquids.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I'm sure you'll go deeper on that.
Yeah, so we always have a colored liquid here on this model. This is with the H0. It displays you what you have done, and the clear liquid, which is this one, it displays you what has to come. You know, and I would say that dealing with these two liquids are the most difficult thing that we had to create and to invent the chemistry of that. The two liquids, they do not have to mix. They really have to be immiscible, whatever the temperature. You know that the liquids that behave and they change, they expand if you increase the temperature, and they compress if you decrease the temperature. This is the principle of the thermometer. You know, the old thermometer, they were mercury or alcohol, and due to the expansion or compression, you have the temperature. So our watches, and due to that, we had to invent a device that I will show you just after. But managing these two liquids, you know, this is one of the key point of the philosophy of HYT. It's, you know, out of the contradiction, out of the opposition of the property of two things, fluids and mechanics, colored liquid and clear liquid. All that, out of that, we do, and we create an innovation. We create a new way of displaying the time. And we love to play with this contradiction, because when you have these things that are opposite, this is where you have the possibilities to create, and the innovation and the creativity of that. So these two liquids are very important because they are opposite, but out of the opposition, they display and they indicate something. Not only here, the precise position of the hours, but also it displays you what you have done and what remains to be done. So during the rewind here, you have, I redisplay it, you have the colored liquid that will flow back. And if you notice, we start the day here at 6 and we finish at 6. A lot of people ask us, how is it that you didn't start, you know, at noon? It's because we wanted to exactly match the indication of the time with the sunrise and the sunset. Because when you live yourself, except for some people, and I do a lot of, well, not a lot, I do some parties sometimes, and I go very late, you know, to bed sometimes. It's very good. I go very late to bed, and sometimes I go to at noon, you know, to bed. But otherwise, you know, the human living, you know, we are based on sunrise, sunset, 6 in the morning, 6 p.m., 6 p.m., 6 in the morning, day, night, day, night. And this is all this flow of going back and forth, etc., that we wanted to represent here. And that's why our watches start here, the display here at 6, and they stop at 6 a.m. or 6 p.m., and they start with the sunrise or the sunset, and they stop at the sunset or the sunrise.
May I add something and ask something? So your question is about really what happens in the boundary between the two liquids, or what are you asking about? Two liquids, or you thought about it was only one liquid? May you be a little bit more precise about your question?
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah, no. The question we have when we present the brand, there is often a misconception at the beginning. There is this. The first idea is that, you know, people see one liquid that is glowing in contrast to the other, and people think there is one liquid. But then when you explain that it's actually two liquids opposed to each other, you know, then it's jaw dropping. It's a big surprise, and it's, you know, it's where for me as well, the magic begins, because then you start talking about the composition of the liquids and how they behave and what is happening in these, that I believe we can call the first liquid retrograde horological function. When you see it in action, as Gregory has just showed it, it's just magic, because is not one liquid going back, but is the second liquid pushing across towards the other liquid and pushing the first liquid back into his reservoir. So that's what I meant.
One of my dreams was if you would take, if you would observe that boundary with a very strong microscope.
Yeah, you mean
and
where the two liquids meet?
You would really observe
where
what
they meet.
happens, yeah, between these two liquids, but especially one with a specific dye inside, which remain in the first but don't move in the second, okay? And the other without. And you would be surprised about movement. So it's, with our eyes, we see that as a, I would say, a fixed boundary. But in the reality, it is constantly moving.
It's dynamic, yeah, I can imagine.
It's an equilibrium.
Yeah.
But if you would, you would really take a microscope, you would see
a
lot of movement.
Which makes it even more complex in order to the right time.
That's life. That's okay.
Yeah.
And what if people ask me about how many liquids there is in HYT watches, in fact, you know, there is 3 liquids, not 2. You know that. Okay. You see 2 liquids. Okay. The colored one and the transparent one. But in fact, in the so-called thermical compensator, in order to compensate the dilatation, the expansion or contraction of the liquids due to the temperature, we have a special small component, okay, it's a little technical, that compensate I would say, the change of volume of the liquid. So no more than that. But in fact, in an HYT watch, you have 3 liquids. Yeah.
I've never put it like that, although of course I know about the thermal compensator.
Yeah, because what is important in what Lucien says is that, and many times people ask us, when will you integrate a tourbillon in a HYT watch? Because tourbillon is kind of a graal of watchmaking, and the thing is that from our side, we are creating the complication of the 3rd millennium. So there will not be any tourbillon in a HYT watch. There will not be any minute repeater. No, minute repeater is a very amazing invention. Great idea. Tourbillon is an amazing invention at that time. And if you think of it, the tourbillon has been created due to the gravity effect on the regulating organ. At HYT, the thermal compensator is the tourbillon of the fluidic technology.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Exactly.
From the complexity, absolutely.
And this is one of
Greg, because we haven't shown where the reservoirs are, because I've seen there is a question about where the reservoirs are. Yeah, if you then can show where is the thermal compensator as well.
So here is the thermal compensator, and the thermal compensator is the tourbillon of the 3rd millennium of the fluidic technology. I don't know if you see it well. Here is very, very tiny. It's I would say shorter than a rice grain.
Is the one on the left for
here,
us watching? Yeah.
This is this.
And can you show where that component is in the actual watch?
It's located inside this bellow.
And those are the bellows reservoirs.
Yes, exactly. The bellows are the reservoirs, and it's hidden inside this one. You know, yes, I think you see it here. And this very, very tiny component, it's done out of a very, very small bellow. It has a liquid inside. okay, a specific liquid that we have developed. And thanks to a very, I would say, complex engineering and complex design of the technology of the bellows, of the fluidic device, it will compensate the effect of the temperature on our fluidic device.
Yeah.
You
So
know that all the liquids, as I mentioned earlier, you know, they expand if you increase the temperature, they compress with the decrease of the temperature.
Yeah.
So what we did is that with this thermal compensator, which is one of the most headache that we had, but we had patents on that, and we spent a lot of crazy hours of engineering on that, and thanks to that, I would say this is the exactly similarity and compared to the tourbillon in the mechanical watch to compensate the gravity. Here we have to compensate for the liquid is not really gravity,
yeah.
it's more the temperature. And thanks to that, this thermal compensator is really the graal of what we have really engineered and what we have done.
So one image, 1,000 words. If you see the size here,
yeah,
you see, in that size, you have to put liquids precisely. That is a IQOS cigarette, simply to have an idea. And
Lucien,
what we have to manage is really microns, yes, and microns after microns.
We are in the micron size, really, and mastering micron in micromechanics, you know that because you are watchmaker and aficionados. 5 microns, okay, difficult. 1.6 micron.
Yeah,
that's difficult.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you are a little bit aware about mechanics, micromechanics, but the question is that size is I would say, related to a chain of tolerances, something like 8 tolerances, one after the other. So the managing of that sheet precision is a big headache, really, okay? And that leads our fantastic watchmaker. That is what I like in that I would say innovation for the watchmaking industry, that having introduced liquids into wristwatches, we challenges the watchmaker, and they had to develop and to be better than before, simply to introduce that very, very special and poetic, I would say, element, which is liquids. And the output of all these headaches is that part here. Maybe you can show that and give some explanation. And that is also a fantastic innovation for, what is the name of the watchmaker? I like him.
Yes.
You see here, that is,
yes. On the big screen, you see that what we do is at HYT, it's a combination of tradition and innovation. So it's a lot of innovation. We just gave you just some hints, you know, tonight. We do not have time to go deep into details, but it's really high tech. We use the technologies that are used by the NASA to go on Mars, on the Curiosity, the small robot. We use the technology that are used on the articulated arm, you know, on the International Space Station, in order to repair some things in the space. But we are not only high tech.
And Greg,
we are also history.
Greg,
we are also history. Yes.
Sorry, Greg. I just wanted to, for those that have seen the liquid module for the first time, just to recap that before we pass to the horological part. So we're saying that the two liquids that we see in the capillary are actually contained in the two NASA-made reservoirs that we see at 6 o'clock. And these reservoirs have to be so sensitive that they have to push the liquids in a very, very precise way, one against the other. And also these two bellows are also controlling the temperature thanks to the thermal compensator, because one of them is actually inside one of the bellows.
Correct, exactly.
So now we are answering the question how we give the impulse to the bellows to push, right?
Good question, Pietro.
Good.
Thank you. So you see here, I don't know if you see my mouse here on the screen, but here you see that we have two bellows. Here on this bellow from the left, you know, here it's full of the black liquid. And here we have a connection that you do not see because it's through the plate. This base of the bellow is connected to the capillary. The capillary is the tube of glass. So here we have the black liquid inside, and we have the capillary in here. The two bellows are flexible. That means that when I have it here, so I will show you. Here is bellow. You see that I can compress it. It's done out of a special alloy. Okay, and you can imagine that if this bellow is full of the liquid, when you compress it, then the liquid will go out of the bellow. It will go out of the bellow inside the capillary. So when you compress this bellow, it will be, the black liquid will be injected inside the tube of glass. And so you will have the black liquid that will be injected inside the tube of glass. The black liquid being immiscible with the opposite properties with the clear liquid, the black liquid will push the clear liquid inside the big bellow. So that means that when you will compress one bellow, the other will expand. And when you go back, it will do like that. It's like a pump. It's like the heart. You know, it will be boom, 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 boom. So the idea of that is really to very precisely inject micro or nanoliters after nanoliters inside the tube of glass, the right quantity of liquid, and the boundary between the black liquid and the clear liquid will tell you what time it is. If you go, so this is the face view of the watch. If you go on the back side of the watch, you will see that on our new caliber that we have developed with the tech group, you will see that there are two components, because the mechanical movements that we have and that we have developed together with either Audemars Piguet, Renaud Papy, with Craniotes and Jean-François Maujon, and with Tech Group and Eric Coudray, with really the best watchmakers that you have currently. Basically, the technology that are inside, you know, they rotate gears and wheels. So that means that they have rotation. What we have to do is that we do not have to rotate. We have to compress the bellow. We have to push down. We have to push down like that. So to transform the rotation movement into a linear movement of compression, we have this cam that you see here, which is a huge cam, and this lever. Inside the cam, you will see that there is a snail shape. You see inside here, it's a snail shape that rotates. It makes one turn in 12 hours. So that means that the lever here, it rotate that way, that the lever during all the day will be compressed, will be pushed down that way. And as here, you will see the small frog. You know, it's a design that we have because the frog is a combination between the water and the ground. So thanks to this connection point here, that means that we will transform the rotation movement into a linear movement. And this is how we connect the tradition and the innovation, the history and the contemporary, the mechanical and the fluidic. This is thanks to these two components, which are the cam here and the lever. And we transform that. And thanks to that, we really use the very precision of the regulation of the time which is given by the mechanical movement, and it will compress the bellow that is here, and it will, thanks to that, it will move forward the black liquid inside the tube of glass.
Yes, Pietro, I suppose that was also a part of your question. In fact, that compression coming from that, let's say, piston you see here on the left. In fact, that compression goes not directly to the bellow. To be clear, that goes first to the thermical compensator. That is important. So, in fact, before beginning to compress and expulse the black liquid inside of the capillary, you compress, you use, I would say, an interface, a liquid interface, which change a little bit the size related with the temperature in order to always expulse, I would say, the same amount of liquid in order to have a linear relation between the position of the liquid inside of the capillary and the position of the needle hands, I would say. That is, normally we don't, I don't know if you explain details about that because it is a little bit anti-intuitive. I observe that it is difficult to explain, but that is fantastic. And absolutely. I remember a pope of the watch industry, I will not say the name, and he was doubting really that it will never run that. For him, it was impossible to make that running, really. And I remember so sentences like, "We are making watches that run." Okay, so we don't innovate. we make so running machines. Yeah,
they work. Yeah.
So please don't imagine who. It was very interesting.
I can only guess.
Yes, and fine. It was really an headache, but now it's really fun. It's running perfectly. That's great. Okay.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I think everyone will agree on the fact that you get mesmerized with a liquid technology, and then when you turn the watch to the back and you stare at the mechanical part that is slightly underestimated when you explain about the liquid, then you know everything makes great sense in how it works and in how spectacular the mechanical part is as well. As we've just seen the Eric Coudray caliber that has been developed, of course, exclusively for HYT, which is a beautiful movement, you know, never mind the liquid module.
May I tell you something very personal? So I personally, as a scientist coming from the nuclear physics and the atomic industry, I was, frankly, personally, I was never really interested in watchmaking, especially mechanics, because if you work with atoms and you hear watchmakers speaking about precision, you simply laugh.
So you didn't know yet that watches are not made to tell the time. They have a completely
different I have function. To say something. I discover after having had the possibility to see that project and that these watches appearing, and I see that now with my eyes, something very special appears in my heart, is passion. And this passion for the micromechanics, I have to say. So what I saw such, I would say, amount of ingenuity, of love, of good work, of handcraft, etc. That's something which is absolutely extraordinary in the watch industry. And so I have to say, so I didn't got, I guess, the coronavirus until now, but fortunately, I've got the I would say the fine watching art virus.
Yeah.
That is something very special.
I think we are all ill of that virus in particular. I think, especially in this broadcast. And Gregory, maybe you want to say something about the fact that so there are watch brands that, as a business model, they have they have developed calibers with other companies. They've developed components, outsourcing the components. Then they put everything together, and then they work out their own concept. You working on the mechanical unit that is behind triggering the liquid module is far from being just buying a movement somewhere where it's available. It is, but on its own, besides the liquid, what you do for the liquid module, on its own is a separate project it's clear when you see how squashed the movement is to be able to house the bellows at 6 o'clock and to be able, of course, to integrate the technology.
Yeah, so I would not say that it's a separate project. It's and all the difficulty of the project is to combine the watch marvels that the best watchmakers. When you meet the people, the Mojon, etc., you meet people that are amazing. And we have two legs, and one leg is based on this tradition, this history, and we pushed the watchmakers, really the master watchmakers, to really the very small corners that we really push the boundaries. But merging these two environments, mechanics and fluidics is two different words. With the fluidics, we talk about liquids, immiscibility, thermal compensation, all that kind of things. And when you have to merge with the traditional and best watchmakers in the world, it's always something which is very difficult, but is very, very amazing, which is very great. And I think that in the brands that exist now, this is where the watchmaking has to, the new watchmaking has to go. It's really to go above, not just to replicate the complications that have been invented by genius guys. And today we have genius guys. We have genius watchmakers that exist, that make amazing, watches. What I was, where I really interact with them is always to say, okay, putting a new tourbillon in a watch, does it make really a lot of sense? It has been invented more than 200 years ago. You can integrate 2 tourbillons, 3 tourbillons. Okay, what's next? Come on, guys, what's next? And I think that it's not being arrogant to do that, because I have so much respect and I would not be able to create a tourbillon from myself. But the thing is that now I think that we have the indie brand, the new indie watchmaking of the third millennium. We have to invent the complication of the third millennium. And when you want to become a watchmaker and a master watchmaker now in Switzerland, you have to do a lot of training, and you have to do a lot of work. And there is a book that registers all the complications that have been invented. And the last edition of the book, the reference book for the watchmakers, is from 1980 something. I don't remember the exact date. It will be in 2021 a new edition of the book of the complicated watches. And we had the opportunity, because we have been the professor that has to do a new edition of this book came to us and he said, okay, explain me HYT, explain me the fluidic technology. And in 2021, there will be this new edition of the complicated watches, and HYT will be of one of the very, very, very few, maybe 3 or 2, something like that, brand that will bring innovation inside. And I think that now we have the responsibility to create and to go above, not only to do a new shape, a new material, a new, something, rearranging something that already exists. No, we have to create something. The new generation, what are we living now? We see rockets that are sent into space. 20 years ago, they were sent, bomb, and then they were destroyed. Now they go back on Earth, SpaceX coming back on Earth, it's one of the most amazing movies that I've ever seen, having the SpaceX spaceship that going back on Earth, We have artificial intelligence. We have the 3D printing of organ. You can print your ear or whatever. What I mean is that we live with this new enlightenment period for the science. The watch industry, for me, has to follow that. And I think that we have to reinvent ourselves. We have to rethink of the fundamental of everything. And this is where we are working a lot, is really to take the old challenges, what is the best way for somebody like me, like Lucien, like you, like everybody, what is the best way to see the flow of time? What is the best way to read the time in the night? When you do not have the possibility to read the time when it's during the dark, during the night, the people created long time ago the sound bells, so you couldn't have the possibility to see, but you had the possibility to listen. It was the beginning of the clocks in the village, and then the minute repeater, etc. It was amazing invention.
I have a good one here.
You have a good one. And
good night.
Yes, and what we did beside the fluidic challenge that we have been working a lot on it, is also to take also the challenge of how to read the time during the night. And we have created a new device. We were the very first one in the world showing the time with 2 LEDs during the night and lighting, the watch with these 2 LEDs. And the 2 LEDs had, with the respect of the haute horlogerie and very high watchmaking, with no battery and no electronic inside. And I think that this is our mission of all the new indie brands that are really pushing the boundaries forward, is really to reinvent the boundaries and the new complication of the 3rd millennium.
May I add something? I would say, I like the question, what is the difference between a classical and an HYT watch movement? What is the difference? Technically, sorry, I'm a little bit a technical guy. And I remember about, I would say, the first challenge we thought related with, if you have to put in movement liquids, being what, like if you use, for instance, a syringe, and if you are a nurse and you make an injection, okay, you have in fact a cartridge, a piston, a needle, and you press on the piston to expulse and to inject the liquid inside of the body. I don't know if one of you even perform an injection, but you will have noticed that you need a certain strength to do that. is really that requires energy, force.
Yeah.
And if you think about what you have at your disposal in a wristwatch as energy source or power source, is a small comment est-ce qu'on appelle le ressort le barillet? You have the small barrel, the spring into the barrel, that is not so a lot of strength. So I would say the first big difference between an HYT movement and a classical, an HYT mechanical movement and a classical mechanical movement is the way you manage the energy stored in the barrel.
Yeah.
That is a big difference,
yeah.
because the two bellows are in fact springs. They behave like springs, like compression springs. So with a compression springs, at the beginning, when the spring is not compressed, you don't need a lot of strength to make a compression. At the end, if it is almost compressed, you have to apply a very high strength.
Yes.
So that means that the strength, so the energy you take out of the barrel during at 6 in the morning and at 6 in the evening is something like 1,500% different. So we speak about a difference from 1 to 15, which is totally different if you have to move a hand simply making so circular rotation. And that is a big, big difference. That is one thing. So energy management, and that is the reason why we work with a closed loop. So the energy we use to compress during the day, it is recuperated after that. So that is a way. So the balance of energy is special. That is one point. And the other big difference is the water tightness. So maybe you know that, but we work inside of the liquid module with a level of water tightness which is 10,000 times higher as the water tightness of the watch itself.
Thank you, Lucien. Yeah. I think there's quite a few questions as well, and I think David was going to say something.
Yeah, I was just saying we need to obviously watch our time. We're now over an hour, so maybe we can go through some of the questions that people in. We've had a lot of questions come in, so we could maybe answer some of the questions before we have to end. I'm just having a look through. Someone's asked actually a technical question, which is what is the life of the thermal activator? The lifespan.
Life, you mean?
Yeah, the compensator.
La durée du thermal compensator.
Ah.
Physique.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a good question because currently we don't know. The thing is that with using liquids, that's why it's a very good question, because we have invented a new technology.
The question is also about the liquids, Greg. There's a question about also the duration of the liquids. Yeah.
Exactly. We have invented a new technology. So when you invent a new technology, and the watch has been on the market since 2012. So from 2012 until now, it's 8 years. Only 8 years. The watch industry, the mechanical movement that are inside, they have been tested, over-tested, etc., for centuries. So we pass all the tests that the HYT watches pass all the tests from the Swiss quality standards that have been written centuries after centuries. We had to create at HYT, we had to create new protocols. And these new protocols are due to the fact that inside an HYT, you have liquids. And inside all the watches in the watch industry, you don't have liquids. So we had to create protocols and tests and qualifications that are here to make sure that in decades, 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, the watch will work correctly. The color of the liquid will not bleach. The thermal compensator will work correctly. So to do that, we have to take the standard tests of mechanics, and to make sure that mechanics is working well in 100 years, you have to compress, you have to turn, you have to stretch all the mechanical parts. It's easy to do. You know, you have to turn 10,000 times a crown and you will see if it breaks or not. We do that and we pass all these tests. But for the liquids and for the thermal compensator, you cannot. If you compress that 10,000 times, you will not do the aging of the chemistry which is inside. That means that we had to invent, we had to create our own protocols which come at the top in addition to the standard test of the watch of the Swiss standards, which are the chronofiab, for example. And I tell you something, when for the chemistry, if you increase by 10 degrees Celsius the temperature of a liquid, then you will have an acceleration of the chemical reaction inside your device. And this is how you will do an accelerated aging of the chemistry. That means that we put for every time we create a new device incorporating liquids, we put the device at 70 degrees Celsius. And there is a law in chemistry that says that 1 month at 70 degrees Celsius is the equivalent of 1 year at room temperature. So all our devices, we have now more than 70 years of aging.
Yeah.
We don't know until when it will stop, but what we know is that when there is a problem is that at the very beginning.
Yes.
That means that our devices have been built in order to last 50, 60, 70 and more. And for that, we also had to create new protocols, new machines to test it. But we do all these tests.
So you accelerate aging. Yeah.
Exactly. Chemical.
There are quite a few, David. So we'll have we need some snap answers as well. There are quite a few questions.
Indeed. One of the other questions is with regards to the design, saying that as well as the circular layout of the capillary, we've also seen it shaped as a skull. Have you any plans for different shapes or different styles on the watch?
Very good question. No answer now. It's a secret. Of course.
So what is amazing, and you see that on this video, basically, we spent something like minimum of 5 years, you know, to to master the art of bending glass. You know, a tube of glass, if you try to bend it and if it's not hot enough, you break it. If it's too hot, it goes into. So we have mastered this bending of glass. We did a watch, like you said, with using a skull shape, yes, that you see here on this capillary. For sure, this is the beginning of, you know, a new era of creativity. Because when you think of it, you have the time that flows and that can follow whatever shape you want. If you want to do an initial, for example, whatever, you know, we started with the round like watchmakers, but then we did a skull shape. But if you want to do a zigzag like that, you can do it. The stream of the time can follow whatever shape. It's an amazing thing, you know, when you want to enter into creation, when you give that to people that, you know, they create, it's an amazing field of creation. So yes, and more will come.
I have a question about that. What would you thought about a watch having the capillary as shape, for instance, the Mississippi River? So simply, so I give you an idea, can have a lot of more. But that is one of, I would say, I'm a lover of contemporary art. And what I like, one of the, I would say, the real customer benefit of using a capillary instead of using needles is that the capillary could be the boundary of a piece of work which would occupy the full display of the watch. You understand what I mean? Because you don't have the hands, I would say, limiting the three-dimensionality of such piece of work. So with a capillary, you can really, I would say, like bolding a piece of work which would occupy the center of the watch and indicating additionally the time. So
Excellent.
To come.
Oh, still to come. So I think, unfortunately, we are running out of time. I don't know if any of the other panel members have any quick questions before we come to an end. But thanks very much from myself for answering the questions and for the technical presentation. Very interesting.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you again for your time. We really appreciate you guys showing us all of the technical innovations, and I apologize to the folks that we didn't get to with the questions, but I'm sure we can follow up with you guys at HYT with some of the questions and distribute those out to our members. So
Yeah,
no, really.
That's something very suggestive. If you have questions, please send all the questions. Questions are fantastic, I would say, trigger for a team like we are here. Thank you for your questions.
thank you.
great.
Yeah, well, I think with every
Thank you.
answer, we have even more questions. Kathleen and I were talking a little bit on the side, and it's definitely sorcery. I thought I understood it, and then you explained it more. So I feel like I understand it more, but now you'll be hearing from me as well. I think I have questions also, but thank you guys so much. This is exactly what I think everybody needs, especially right now, is something to kind of tickle the brain a little bit. So you guys have definitely done the impossible. You've reinvented the wheel, which is not an easy thing to do, and it's especially hard to do it in a way that's intuitive. So yeah, just thank you so much, really. This is the highlight of probably my quarantine. There you go.
Thank you.
Cheers.
I wish there was more than coffee in here, but cheers.
We have to make cheers together. So guys,
Coffee
let's be serious.
Coffee is not an option. I know, Adam. I know you don't have coffee in your mug. You know.
No. My wife. Apparently, I was going through the booze too fast, so she's pacing me. I don't know where it is. It's like an Easter egg hunt for adults. So I got to find it.
Great. Cheers.
Cheers, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
All righty.
Fantastic.
And we'll definitely be hearing from you soon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Take care. Thank you so much.
Everyone. Take care.
Dave,
Thanks everyone for